Hello, guys. This is the Wings Mobile Detailing Podcast. And on the automotive topic today, we're talking about 10 tips, 10 must knows, 10 must do's for paint correction. If you have a paint correction service to do, compound, polish, and polish to bring out back the gloss to that car, remove scratches, swirl marks, buffing the car with a dual action buffer. 10 tips what you should do, and you should definitely listen to this if you're about to do a paint correction. So stay tuned, listen to this quick introduction, and we'll get it right back to you.
Welcome to the Wings Mobile Detailing Business and Automotive Podcast, the only podcast that will guide you on how to start and grow six-figure companies. As our team expand from one business location to worldwide domination, you will get step-by-step insights from a millennial franchisor and franchise owner with your host, Andre Mezzalera.
Back to the Wings Mobile Detailing Podcast, and you're listening to this about paint correction. So let's jump right into it, because this is going to be a quick podcast, and you guys, just so you guys remember on this podcast when you do paint correction. Maybe you are doing paint correction, you can listen to this while you're doing it. Number one, when you're going to do a compound buff the car to remove scratches, swirl marks, no matter what color of car it is, no matter what you're doing, you kind of want to reach close to perfection as possible without cutting through a lot of clear coat. Before you start paint correction, which is very important, is number one, the car is fully prepared. No tar, you wash the car, maybe you foam bath the car, you clay bar the car, you degrease the car before the clay, wash it and then clay it. No tar underneath on the side skirts, on the front bumper, windshield. Scrub that off, get everything off. Completely clean. The car must be completely clean, smooth as glass. So when you take it inside, you just go ahead and start compounding the car, and there's no water, nothing on the way. Make sure it's completely dry so it's not mixing with the polisher. Number two, a clean buffing pads. You want to make sure the buffing pads that you're using are clean. Maybe you used it before, you washed it before, fine, or they're brand new, which is even better. So that's gonna make a huge difference of using a clean versus a dirty buffing pad. If there's anything on the buffing pad that you see dirt like sticking out, not stained dirt, but I mean actually like grumps or something, you're gonna scratch the car with that. Or if the buffing pad is eaten away, it's already gone, then it's too much moisture in there, too many products, maybe you use it a lot of times. Some people use the same buffing pad 10 times. I think that's way too much. So make sure the buffing pad is clean, no product, you brush it, you've washed it before, and it's not wet. Clean buffing pads are the way to go. Now, when you are doing the buffing, and I'm going to talk to you about putting product in the pad. So number three, I'm not going to get too technical in talking about, the amount of product that you put on the pad, the type of pad to use. We have other podcasts for that. So number three is, if you're in a very hot and dry a place where you're doing the correction, and you put some 3-4, first you prime the pad, and you put some dots of compound in there in the pad with your dual action buffer. If it's too hot, you can spray one spray of water in the pad with the product. Because depending on the type of compound that you use, most compounds are very dry, because it's just that actual rubbing action, the abrasiveness on the compounds. Don't have much moisture, especially the compound from Meguiar's, the ultra cutting compound from Meguiar's. They're dry. So it's fine if you're using if it's a little bit humid outside, if it's not too hot or dry. But if it is dry, you put some dots of compound in the pad. Spray some water. Spray one spray of water in the pad just to give some moisture for it to slide a little bit better. If you feel like it's too dry, and it's not gonna dry as quick on the paint, and then it's a pain to get off, and it's not working well. That's the number three. Number four. While you're doing the first panel buffing, and I'm gonna go on the buff speed, which is one of the most important thing. But make sure when you do each panel, especially if you're compounding it. The polish, you don't have to clean it as much. The third stage of polish, you don't have to clean the pad as often. But if you're doing the first stage of compound, and let's say you're using a microfiber cutting pad from Meguiar's as well, each panel that you do and you're polishing it, you're compounding it, you look at the pad after the first panel that you did, all the microfibers, they're going to be stuck down. They're not going to be up. It's very important that those pads, they are up before you start compounding it, because that's what actually gets to the paint. That's what actually gets to the grooves of the paint itself. So each time that you compound the car, get the brushing, have the brush, the pad brush, and brush off the pad. If you brush off the pad each time, you're gonna clean off all the excess compound, and then you go ahead and apply more product. You do the second panel, and all the fibers are up and ready for the job. Again, do not do a lot of panels. Like, let's say, don't do an entire car with one single pad, because the pads are not gonna last. They're gonna be down by the time you're on the second half of the car and using the same pad. The pad's not gonna work anymore. So definitely use clean pads as well. You can switch. You can have multiple pads, 2 or 3 pads for the compound. Number 5 actually. You can use the isopropyl alcohol between each time you do different stages of polish. So let's say you just finished compounding the entire car, or when you're removing the compound, let's say you're compounding the car and you're removing the compound with a towel, you use some isopropyl alcohol to remove that compound completely. Because if you just use a clean towel, dry towel, to remove the compound, there's still gonna be some oil residue from the compound on the paint. You're not gonna see it, but the oils of the compound is still gonna be there. And if you leave oil there, and by the time you do the second stage of polish and then the third of polish again, those oils are gonna be in between the paint and the stage of polish. So the polish is not gonna work well, because the oil are gonna to leave that slick surface. So each time that you're removing the compound residue that you compounded, spray some isopropyl alcohol, or they call eraser, or panel wipe from G-Technic. It's still isopropyl alcohol to remove the compound. Very important to do that when you're removing the compound. So by the second time you do the polish, the paint is completely naked, completely clean, and you're gonna have a much better result. Believe it or not, you're going to have a better result. Number 6, I believe we're number 6 now. Now, this is one of the most important factors to consider when you are buffing the car, is the buffing speed. I'm not talking about the speed of the buffer. I'm not talking about pressure of the buffer, which I'm gonna cover right now, but this is about buffing speed. How fast you move your dual action buffer if you're using a DA, how fast you move it in the car. The buffing speed, no matter if you're doing compound, if you're doing polish, dual action buffers, they made dual action buffers with the intentions to have the buffer do the work for you. The rotary is the buffers that you have to go up and down, side to side, super fast and quick, so you don't burn the paint. The dual action buffer is the type of buffer where you want to have the buffer do the work. You put some pressure there, and you go very slow, cross hatch pattern, very slow, up and down and side to side. Maybe you can do only one cross hatch, up and down, side to side. If you don't take this seriously, if you're doing the car, make sure, let's say you follow all the other steps that I showed it to you guys. Clean pad, always make sure the fibers are up, microfiber are clean, isopropyl alcohol. But if you do fast, if you compound the car fast, you're gonna leave micro marring on the car, or haze. That micro marring or haze, They look like curtain type of scratches, and you can only see it in the sun. So let's say you're compounding the car and there's micro marring in the car and haze, and you don't have the light, strong light, you're not going to see it. It's going to look like it's perfect. But then you do, let's say, all the 3 stages of the car. You drive the car out, the sun is hitting it, you see a lot of like wavy curtain looking scratches, micro marring or haze. So to avoid that from happening, you don't get yourself going fast on the speed of the buffer, because you're gonna be like, oh, the paint is coming out perfect, so I'm gonna go faster so I can finish the car quicker. It will be a nightmare by the time you finish all the 3 stages of polish, and you take the car in the sun and you see all the haze. It's gonna be a nightmare, and you don't want to go back all the way to the first step again. Important. I'm gonna say this again: speed of the buffer. Do not move fast with the buffer. Do a section at a time. If you want to do a big section, if it's not too dry outside and you feel like the product is going over in a bigger panel side, still you're going slow. That's the most important thing compared to the pressure that you put on the buffer, the amount of pressure, the size of the panel that you do. So that buffing speed when you do the compound, also when you do polishing. If you're polishing the car as well, or let's say you're in the 3rd stage of polish, maybe on the buffer when you're doing the polish, you can increase the speed of the buffer itself, but always make sure to do it slow. Buffing speed as well, the speed of the buffer, setting 1, setting 2, 4, 5. I like to use setting 4, 4.5 when I'm doing the compound. Yes, I'm not using setting 5.5 or 6, the maximum speed, depending on the buffer that you're using. But I'm not using the 5 or 6, because that also, when you do a fast speed, don't confuse speed and pressure with amount of cutting and amount of power that you're putting in the paint. Maybe the more speed, in paint correction, speed is not a good thing. In paint correction, taking your time, at the end of the day, you're going to have a better result and you're not going to have to go back and redo your service. So speed of the buffer also I like around 4.5, because normally when you put the speed of the buffer too fast, the same thing is going to occur. You're going to have those micro marrings, and it's not going to be equally cut. So 4.5 is good. Again, speed. Speed is very important. Take it slow. Take one panel at a time. Now, number 7 is the windows. What are you actually polishing, doing the paint correction on if you want to do a complete service, the whole exterior of the car, and you're going to apply protection afterwards. So right now you're correcting it. Do the windows. Why not? Why don't you just get the same pad that you're using it? If you're using a microfiber compound, do the windshield. You're able to compound the windshield and polish them out to make sure that there's no light scratches, no light. Not contamination, because contamination, you want to get it off with a clay bar. So you can also do the windows, do the windshield, and make sure that since sometimes the scratch residue is in there, you're going to be able to remove that. On number 8, small areas to polish. So let's say you're polishing the car, 1st, 2nd, 3rd stage of polish, and you have in between the headlights, let's say you only have one polish, unless you have those tiny little polisher machines that you can do in between the crevices. But if you don't have that, which I actually prefer not to have that and do with my fingers, I wrap a microfiber towel around my finger. Let's say the rear light of Mustangs, they have the little 3 gaps in between. I like to get some compound with my fingers on the microfiber towel or polish, and just rub it real quick on that, lightly and quick, and you can polish that out with your fingers in between the grooves and crevices of the grill of the car in front. So make sure, wrap around the microfiber towels in your finger, put some polish in there, and rub it, those small areas. Most times you may not need those fancy tools, because I have a lot of luck when I'm doing it with my fingers. It's quicker, I get on my fingers to do it real quick, and I have better control, and it comes out really nice. Now let's say when you're compounding the car, and then after you compound it, you see that, oh, I did the entire car, for example. There are some areas here and there of the car that needs to be retouched. So that's number 9 now. If you have to retouch an area of the car with a compound, and let's say you already polished the car and finished the paint correction, and you see some areas that needs to be retouched, but they're not too bad, and you don't want to repeat the same 3, because if you compound the car again, if there are a little bit deep scratches and you have to compound the car again, then consequently you're going to have to polish the car 2 times again. So you're finishing off and you're not leaving the micro marring. That's what the polish steps do after the compound. You remove the micro marring. But let's get to number 9. If you have to go back to one area, and I like to get in the step number 2 instead of starting off with the heavy cutting pad on one area to redo, or with the very light polishing. I like to be in between to use the second stage that I use. Even put some, ideally polish, but if you still have to put compound, that's fine. But put some polish in the pad in there, and you repeat the same with the same amount of slow and with a little bit more pressure. So that's the thing. If you have to go back to do an area, everything's done, put polish, do the second pad that you were using to correct the paint. In our case, sometimes we use the orange pad with a finishing polish from Maguire's. And we go slow on that area with a little bit, about 5 pounds of pressure on the buffer. Still moving slow. My speed is not changed. Speed of the buffer is still around 4.5 to 5. So I'm still moving slow. Now, when you're moving slow with pressure on that, with 5 pounds of pressure, you're cutting a little bit deep. You're helping the pad to cut deep and remove that deeper scratch that you saw and you wanted to correct. Consequently, when you're tackling deeper stuff and putting pressure in there, you're going to leave micro marring in there. So you consequently have to finish off with the last stage of polish to finish off well. But if you want to skip that, it's a quick tip that will work sometimes. When you're doing the first cross hatch on the stage of polish, we went back there to polish with the orange pad. You're putting 5 pounds of pressure, you're correcting it when you do first pass, and then pass it again over with pressure. And then what you want to do is go back, still with the same product. You didn't change the product. You didn't get the pad out. You lose your pressure. You still go slow. Slow is very important. And you go back and you go with very light pressure. What that's going to do is you're going to actually finish, because you're using the same polish product. You're going to finish off so you don't have to switch pads and go another stage. So you're finishing off with very little pressure, cross hatch again very slowly. And then you go one more time. You're in the same panel still. One more time, you lose even more pressure to the point where you're barely touching the buffer with pressure. And you just let the buffer and low speed setting, do the work very slow. Low speed setting, you lower the speed setting and remove the pressure almost completely. And then you go slow again, and that's going to finish off better. This way you didn't have to change the pad, do all that, because when you put pressure and you take away pressure, you kind of like in the polishing stage, you're not touching it as much, but still going slow so you're not leaving micro marrings. Finally, number 10, wax or seal the car when you're doing a protection. So when you do the protection, it's also good to do the eraser before you wax after you finish the 3 stage of polish, or how many stages you did. Again, each time that you're removing the compound, the polish, you're using the isopropyl alcohol. So now the car is ready to receive some protection, wax or seal. Now, you don't want to use the wax or sealant. That's the only tip for number 10. You don't want to use wax or sealant or if the last stage of polish that you're using is, let's say, HD speed, for example, where it's a 2-in-1 polish and seal. That's part of our paint correction. If we're doing ceramic coating afterwards, we do not use any product that has fillers, that has sealants or waxes or any type of protection. we use pure polisher product, like the Maguire finishing polish, for example. That's just a polisher. We're not adding any more wax on it, because if you're going to ceramic coat the car, you don't want any protection, because if you do have protection there, you're gonna have to remove, so that the whole point of the isopropyl alcohol is to remove any oils, especially wax or protection that's in there. Now, if you're not using ceramic coating on the car, go ahead, use all the type of sealant that you want to use. The last step of polish on the paint correction service, you can use a 2-in-1 product where it's a polish and seal, and then you can follow up with a coating of wax. That's fine. But just if you're ceramic coating the car, you have to make sure, again, after you do the full paint correction, only with compound and polishers, make sure you isopropyl alcohol the entire car so that the paint is completely naked and it's ready to be applied as ceramic. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to conclude for whoever wants to stay for another 1 minute here. What we went through is, number 1, the paint is fully prepared before you start paint correction. No tar, no bugs, no nothing. Number 2, you have clean microfiber pads. Number 3, when you're applying product, and if it's dry outside, you can spray some water on the pad just to moisturize a little bit. Number 4, clean the pad with a brush every time you finish a panel, especially if you're doing the compound. The compound, you definitely want to brush the pad every panel. Number 4 is to use an isopropyl alcohol eraser when you're removing the compound or polish. So you polish it. Of course, when you polish the car, you want to remove the polisher product from the paint right away, because it's not like a wax that's drying in there. Use an isopropyl alcohol on the towel to make sure the towel is soaked in alcohol, so that you remove any oil residue. So for the next step that you do the polish, it's completely naked, the paint. Number 5, buffing speed. Buffing speed is important. Again, slow buffing speed, and speed on the buffer and speed on your hands as you're moving the buffer around. Number 6, windows. You can polish the windows and the glass and everything. Number 7, the small areas that you polish, you can use your fingers when you're between the crevices. Number 9, actually, I'll skip a number. We're number 9 already. Retouch the same. If you have to retouch one area with the compound or polish, so let's say you finish the entire paint. So number 9 is you can do all those 2 steps using only one, having the pad only once there. But as you do the cross hatch patterns, you're decreasing the pressure in the buffer until there's no pressure at all. So you're finishing the paint still with the polisher. Number 10, wax or seal. Don't wax, don't seal the car. Don't use a 2-in-1 product if you're doing ceramic coating afterwards. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. We have more podcasts. That's why I didn't get much into detail with this one. It was still like a 23-minute podcast. Wow. But I still have other podcasts on how to do paint correction. I have other topics on why you should not want to reach perfection when you're doing paint correction. It's a very odd topic, but there is if you scroll down the list on auto detailing topics. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Please subscribe to this podcast and leave a review if you guys felt like this was helpful to you. Reviews help me so much. Thank you very much.